Hey, so this is Attorney Brent Bowyer talking to you from ADAM, and wanted to talk today about a common mistake that goes on, and a consideration at the beginning of a divorce case is moving out of the house. The question will come up at the beginning stages, once there's a divorce filed, maybe there's not one filed yet, of should I move out? My wife wants me to leave, or I want to leave because it's uncomfortable for me to stay in the same home. And we want you to be aware of some things before you make that decision. Of course, number one, all of this basically is an introduction. It's meant as educational. We can't really give you legal advice. We don't know your specifics of your situation, but we want you to know some things. We want you to know what we know about it and the problems that people run into and the pitfalls of moving out of a house without a plan and without really a sense of what is going to happen next. So, that question comes up. The first thought is before you're leaving, before there's discussion, there may be these words of, I want a divorce, your wife tells you she wants a divorce, or you want one, and that may cause you to rush into thinking you need to leave. And first of all, you don't have to leave. It's, of course, a decision that's up to you, and some things you should consider. Number one is economic kind of considerations. You move out, you lose economies of scale, meaning now there's two separate places, two separate homes, two separate sets of bills, so it's going to cost more to live just by definition. Even if you're living with a family member, you end up with additional bills. You end up paying bills that you have no control over at the shared home. So something to consider there right from the beginning is what are the bills going to look like? What's my financial expectations if I walk out of the door, if I move out? Am I expected to still pay the bills or my share of the bills, and what that's going to look like? Another thought there is what's going on when I'm not at the house. What's going on with my personal property? Do I need to worry about things being taken, things being stolen, things being sold on eBay, whatever it might be? So one thought as far as personal property prior to moving out would be make a video of what you have, go around, get a sense of what's in the house, videotape the contents of the home, just like you would if you were going to turn a video over to your insurance company for a fire claim or whatever else it might be. You want to know what you have at that time. There's things you're going to forget, there's things that might go missing, and you want to have proof of what was there at the time you left if your decision is to move out. And of course, if there's minor children, our advice is always you need to stay. We don't want you moving out without a plan, without a sense of what's next, without something in place that you can count on, something you can enforce, as far as custody, parenting time, support, status quo on bills, whatever it might be. So moving out at the beginning of a divorce when you have minor children can basically bring all these issues to a head. It can accelerate the issues that are in dispute, where really your entire divorce needs to be decided on kind of a temporary basis, because you need to figure out what's going to go on with custody, when are you going to see your kids, are you expected to pay child support, are you also expected to pay your share of the bills, what stuff can you take with, what's going on. And that's all things to be thinking about before you move out. It may lead you to decide, I really can't move out right now until we have a sense of what's going on and we know a little more about it. Another consideration prior to moving out, especially when you have children, is what's going on when I'm not there? Do I have to worry about something happening to the house, something happening to my stuff? Does my wife have a boyfriend, and now the boyfriend's coming and going at my house? So these are all things you want to be thinking about prior to leaving. Of course, we're not saying you should be paranoid about everything, but you need to have a general sense of what does my life look like, what's my spouse likely to do, and what am I dealing with here at the beginning stages of a divorce. So those are some things to consider here. And as far as custody and parenting time, you really would, if you have children, of course, you'd want a schedule in place before you leave. You'd want to know, do I trust this person to let me see my kids, or is there going to be problems? If there's any concern there, you'd want to get a written agreement put in place prior to moving out. And really, the only way to do that is to file for divorce. Once you get a divorce case filed, which is the other advice we typically give out at the beginning, there's advantages to filing first. Once we have a divorce case filed, we can enter a custody order and parenting time order and a sense of what's going on with child support and paying the bills, and all of that can be reduced to writing. You and your wife agree on it. Now everybody knows where they stand. Now you can walk out knowing where you stand, what's going to happen, what to expect with kids, property, paying bills, and whatever else it might be, and you're not worried about how those things are going to go. And a typical question that comes up in this discussion is abandonment, and this sense of, am I abandoning my kids when I move out? So you can assume, for purposes of the beginning stages here, abandonment is really going to be kind of a myth. It's not something that's going to apply. It's not the abandonment that we're worried about. It's the not having contact with your children when you want, not being able to call them, interference from your wife potentially of when you see them. You may run into what's basically known as parental alienation, where your wife is telling the kids that you left and you have some other life now and you don't want to see the kids when really you desperately want to see them, and she's stopping it. So it can be all kinds of things going on, all kinds of mind games. And when you're not in the same home, you just don't know what's happening from day to day, and there needs to be some real concern in that. Another thought we have on all of this is, basically, if you're planning on moving out or thinking about moving out, or your wife's telling you to move out, whatever the case may be, your best strength in negotiating that topic is to have the discussion before you leave. If you move out and then start talking about when am I going to see the kids and what bills do I have to pay and what stuff can I take, now you feel like you're on the outside looking in. You feel like you need a key just to get back in there, and you feel like you've been kind of evicted from your own life. We don't want to see that happen. So before you move out is the best time to be discussing all of these issues. If your wife really wants you out, use that to your advantage and let her know, I'm willing to move out, but we need to get some things worked out first. Then you can do it the right way. Then you have a say in what's coming, what you're looking at, what to expect. You don't want to be losing access to your house for no good reason. If you need to make a repair or do things or go over and cut the grass or be aware of whatever's going on at the home, you don't want to have that be a big issue. You want to know ahead of time, what access am I going to have before I move out? What am I going to be looking at? There are some other compromises as well, if you have children, of who's going to live in the home and who has to move out. There is a concept, at least in Michigan, known as nesting, where basically a divorce is started and the children stay in the home, the parents move in and out. And this might be because they really can't afford a second home at this point, or don't know what they're doing with custody and parenting time long term. You stay with a family member. So basically you could do 1 week with mom, 1 week with dad, back and forth on that for a while. Temporary, during the divorce, of course, not after you're divorced. This way the children stay put, the children have the same routine, the parents move in and out because they really don't get along with each other. Mom can stay there for a week, then dad stays for a week, and they go back and forth that way. And that's called nesting, and that's something that's done in some of the divorce cases. It's not that common, but it may apply to you. It may be something that you need to think about doing, and those are some considerations there. You'd also want to know before you move out, what are the bills? I want to know where my finances are at. It's common in a marriage, in a relationship, that one of you has a lot of knowledge about what the monthly bills are. The other person may not know a lot about it. It doesn't take both of you to pay the bills, so it's perfectly reasonable for you to say, well, I don't know, my wife takes care of that. I don't know, she pays the bills. I really don't see all that. I don't have a good sense of what we spend and what it looks like. You're going to want to know how all that is going, what things are looking at, what your monthly budget is before a divorce really gets going. It's a time to educate yourself. You need to know what the bills are, what kind of money's coming in, so that you have a sense of what's typical. That way you know if there's abuse of that going forward in the divorce, if your wife is spending more money than normal, or if she's trying to take advantage of things, you'll know it. Or if there's problems that maybe neither of you are aware of. Maybe there's a bill that you weren't aware of, or a bill that's getting too high, out of control, whatever it might be. You want to be aware of that ahead of time. One other idea prior to moving out would be documentation. You want to make sure you get copies of your documents, tax returns, financial things. Of course, now there's a lot of electronic data available, but you want to make sure you know what you have. You don't want to walk out and then have your first meeting with a divorce attorney be a bunch of questions you can't answer because you don't have copies of anything and aren't the one dealing with the monthly finances typically. So you'd want to look at all that, document all of it before you leave. Whose name's on the titles, whose name's on the mortgage, whose name's on the cars. You want a general sense of that at the beginning stages. It doesn't have to be before you meet with your divorce attorney, but it needs to be early on in the situation. And so there's some things to consider here. It can be scary. There can be a lot to talk about. There's a lot to discuss. But if you do it the right way, It won't be a problem. We want you to have a heads up before anybody moves out. What does this look like? What to expect? What's realistic and what's expected of you? And I hope that helps. Thanks.